Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles legal issues, bring you information and analysis. My name is Dumila Matez. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion today by tweeting us at Rights Recourse or calling our studio line on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Alternatively, email your thoughts about this program and many other programs. You can even suggest what other topics you can discuss on this show to rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. The rights to life and dignity are the most important of all human rights, and this must be demonstrated by the state in everything it does, including the way it punishes its criminals. The late Chief Justice Arthur Chaskalson, President of the South African Constitutional Court and Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, in a 1995 decision to declare the death penalty unconstitutional. More than 50 years ago, 5 members of the same family were hanged in the gallows of Kgosi the Second Constitutional Center by the apartheid regime. On Wednesday, the Minister of Constitutional Development and Correctional Services, Mr. Michael Masuta, launched the Gallows Exhumation Project. The project, led by DNA experts, will lead a process to exhume the bodies of those political prisoners who were buried at the correctional services and in and around Pretoria. Today on Rights and Recourse, we explore this process of unearthing part of South Africa's dark hour. But first, let's have a look at this insert.
A tour of the gallows, opening up old wounds. Hundreds of political prisoners took their last steps here.
This rope with this steel ring will break the person's neck from the back. So, and then the person will fall down there and he will die.
Just walking those 52 steps that the prisoner had to walk, the condemned prisoner had to walk on his way to his execution is a very emotional and traumatizing experience. If you look at the number of people who were executed, that long list of names, it just breaks you.
Families were not allowed to view the bodies. They were buried in unmarked graves. Years later, the bodies are to be exhumed for more dignified burials.
As PAC, we are saying this is long overdue. Even you need to understand that these people were hanged in the early 60s, 62, 63, 64, and now we have been in this democratic dispensation for more than 21 years, and then we are only doing it now. But we must appreciate the effort.
Generally, we help as an organization, but because we owe it to the families to provide answers in some of the questions. Yes, it does also take us a step forward in terms of reconciliation.
The exhumation process is expected to take between 3 to 6 months. DNA identification technology will be used to ensure families receive the right remains. Sipho Sturman, SABC News, Pretoria.
Thank you to Sipho there, who was telling us about the process that took place last week, Wednesday. To discuss today's topic, we are joined in the studio by the Honourable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Michael Masuta. And at our Cape Town studios, we would like to welcome Mr. Luthando Mbinda, President of the Pan-African Congress of Azania. Gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon and afternoon to the listeners.
Minister, let's start here. This was not the first tour by the relatives of those who were incarcerated and hanged at the facility, at the Kgosi the Second facility.
Yes. In fact, this is a continuation, hopefully leading to closure of a project that was initiated by my predecessor, Minister Mapisa Ngakula, who at the time was Minister of Correctional Services back in 2011, who realized after a predecessor had basically dismantled the gallows and sealed it off, reconstructed it and had it cleaned up so that it can become what it is today. Now, there has been work that's been done since then, and people would want to ask why it took so long. It's because, amongst other things, there had to be the re-identification even of the location of some of these graveyards, because they have become completely unidentifiable with overgrowths over them. There had to be geomapping technology used, thanks to information that was well preserved by the Tshwane municipality, where we're able to identify the exact location of some of the grave sites, so that the excavations could take place, and additional information had to be sourced elsewhere, piecing different pieces of information from police stations to the Kgoshi Correctional Facility itself, etc.
Minister, you tell a graphic story of how Kgoshi himself was, like many other of his peers elsewhere in South Africa, were fighting against colonialism, was led naked and died by hanging at this facility.
Yes. The central prison or correctional center, which is now named Kgoshi, it used to be called New Lock, and before that it had many other names, was named by the current president, President Jacob Zuma, back in 2011 in recognition of and commemoration of the resistance to colonial rule by Kgoshi back in the 1800s, that led to him being the first political execution back then in 1883 at Kgoshi Correctional Facility. So in commemoration of the contribution that he made in the struggle against then colonialism, and of course subsequently apartheid, the president decided to rename that facility, and effectively kickstarting this process that leads us to where we are today.
Mr. Mbinda, down in Cape Town, apparently, understandably, because of the PAC's activities in the 1960s, the majority of the prisoners are PAC members or POCO members.
Yes, it is correct. Yeah. Majority of them are POCO members.
If you can help us quickly as to, I was a bit confused when I was doing research around this issue as to what is POCO and what is PAC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You will recall after the anti-pass campaign of 1960, then you will remember the response of the then racist regime, shooting people that were marching peacefully. And then EPAC had to take a decision, and the decision that it took on the 11th of September in response to the brutal killing of the African people, it was to form POCO, which was renamed APLA. It was on the 11th of September in 1960. Then these POCO heroes, and then they confronted, the Boers during those days, in those areas that are mentioned, Impashe, Ipal, Ulanga, Krugersdorp, you see, and in some parts of northern Transvaal, you see, of the then northern Transvaal. So they fought tirelessly, and they were fighting for the liberation of the people in this country. So they were not fighting for their families. So, and then after that, the response, obviously, from the then racist regime was to kill them, you see, execute them in a barbaric way, as it has already been explained.
Minister, you in a speech you made to the meeting of international meetings of ministers of justice, you told the story of Kgoshi II. How was it received?
Well, that meeting in Rome is an annual event that's organized by the Sant'Egidio Catholic Society, which seeks to advocate for the abolition of the death penalty, we were actually privileged to be the first to speak in recognition of the leading role that South Africa played in advancing a culture of human rights, but in particular ensuring the abolition of the death penalty. We shared this experience to demonstrate that there is nothing beautiful about judicial execution. And we thought that there wasn't a more graphic account of how cruel and degrading such punishment could be as was witnessed in the case of Kgoshi Mampuru. As you indicated earlier, he was hanged naked in full view of some 260 white males at the time. He was referred to as a Kefir king and was reported as such even in the media at the time, because that's how black people were referred to. So that has also the racial element, and it was an expression of white supremacy over black.
Let's hold it there, Minister. We'll continue our discussion with the Minister. If you'd like to join us in today's discussion, you can join us on 011-714-5497 or 5498. Stay with us.
Ephraim defied family and traditions to follow her dream.
Decided that I'm going to prove to them that they were wrong.
The first breakthrough came in when she was studying and touring in Europe.
That was my first breakthrough.
Generations was her first television debut in South Africa.
It was my first gig. I was very excited. I was very happy. I said, yeah, this is confirmation I'm at the right place.
After pain, rejection, and suffering, her dream became a reality.
I followed my path, and I'm happy and grateful and blessed.
Join your host, Puleng Mulabati, on Rupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Welcome back to Rights and Recourse to discuss the gallows exhumation project that was launched by Minister Masuta on Wednesday. Minister, the other question for me was, if there are 130 political prisoners who were hanged at this facility, why are we only looking for 83?
Yes. Soon after democracy, many political parties, including the African National Congress, initiated a party-driven process of identification and exhumation. Some approximately 40 to 50 exhumations were done that way, and that explains why you then have the balance of the 83 that still remain to be exhumed. Of course, there has been mistakes that were made in the process because DNA sampling using a bone is technology that's not more than a decade old or so, and certainly did not exist in South Africa at the time, and that was the only remaining sample that you could use to identify with certainty. So some of those exhumations were not quite accurate, and they had to be re-examined and corrected and so on, but that's detail for another day. What matters really is that we now have much more reliable technology. It's state-driven, and we are very pleased with the work that has been done so far.
How far back are we likely to go? I'm coming to you, Mr. Mbinda, but I just wonder, how far back are we likely to go?
Well, at this stage, we're focusing between 1960 and 1990, when the death penalty was finally suspended and eventually after democracy completely abolished. But there were political executions that date back, as I indicated earlier, even as early as 1883 and possibly even before that. Obviously, bone-based DNA biodegrades over time, and so to be able to identify with precision is quite challenging the older the remains are. Of course, in some instances, several tests have had to be done, another sample, a third sample taken until they were able to find some traces of DNA that could be used to determine. But there are other methods that are also being used simultaneously. For example, they are able to tell from the bone structure as to whether it was a male or a female, the age of the person, and compare that with the records, and that would give them an idea of whether they are looking in the right direction or not.
Tatumida, the other thing, I was close to tears when I read the story of the Vulindlela family, where a whole family of 5, including a boy as young as 18 years, were hanged at this facility for apparently the killing of Norman Grobelaar, his wife Elizabeth, and the 2 daughters, Dawn and Elena, and Derek Thompson at the Mbashe River Bridge.
Yes, you are correct. Most of them were when you think about that, it was really a very tragic situation where these 5 family members were just, executed. And what is making us to have more pain is the fact that even the father of the 18-year-old from the Vulindlela family was he even appealed to the court that they must rather hang him than his son. So this 18-year-old boy, he was hanged with his brothers and also with his grandfather. So it is a very painful. It was a very painful situation. The whole family was wiped out, you see, because of defending its own people. Yeah, and they were instructed, they were commanded, by Moses. That was his nickname in Mbashe, and they were operating in the Mbashe River and also Bazia when they did that.
Minister, the apartheid government used to use the common purpose doctrine a lot, especially in political cases. Is that common purpose doctrine still in place?
I will not want to put myself on the spot. My recollection of criminal law and the law of evidence in that regard is a bit rusty. I can't quite recall if we have retained the principle or whether we've since, well, I studied law during apartheid days when the common purpose doctrine still applied. But essentially it is basically a conviction by association. The mere fact that you were at the wrong place at the wrong time was sufficient for you to end up at the gallows, and that is how unfair the application of that principle was. But we all know that the apartheid system particularly was very vindictive when it comes to black accused persons. They were not usually represented, and very often proceedings were in Afrikaans, and the translation was not always accurate, and with the consequence that many people were convicted wrongly for many reasons. And of course there was prejudice even within the judiciary, which is a legacy we are hoping the judiciary itself is gradually cleansing itself out of. And that was that, for example, if you were a black person and raped a white woman, you were sure to hang. But conversely, if you were a white man raping a black woman, it was most unlikely that you would get a serious sentence. So those were some of the manifestation of racial oppression. And that's one of the reasons why we are launching this project on Human Rights Month, which, as you know, the President declared this year to be to focus specifically on anti-racism as well.
Well, let's now take an ad break, and when we return, we'll look at some of the other issues. And if you'd like to join us in this discussion, you can call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights Recourse, or email us at rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. Stay with us.
News Today keeps you informed with news locally and around the world.
When Judge John Hlophe challenged the Supreme Court of Appeal when it sent the matter back and said that there must be an inquiry set up.
We unpack business news.
There's an increase in general inflation in the country.
We give you up-to-date news of the day.
The drugs were seized at several locations in Sydney, including a shipping container sent from Hong Kong. Police say it's their largest haul of illicit drugs in 2 years.
We round up sports news.
Kotata, tell me about the legacy that you would like to build and be remembered for.
Trying to get my foundation running, which is going to focus on, all the sport, doesn't matter disability or able body. So, I'm passionate about sports.
Stay informed every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m. CAT. SABC News.
Preparing for victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Rights and Recourse as we continue our discussion here around the gallows exhumation project. Minister, I asked you earlier as to how far back do you intend going in the exhumation of prisoners who were hanged at this facility, because I read in the City Press this morning that the Hoshimampuru's family would really like to know where he was buried.
Yes, no, that's true. When I was at Mamune, because since I took office, I attend the ceremony. I've been attending the ceremony every year, commemorating his life and execution in the manner that he was amongst the people of that area, who they consider as one of their heroes. The difficulty with the identification process generally with people who were executed is that, first of all, the system buried them after they have been executed without the involvement of members of the family. Very often they would only disclose where they are buried years after the burial had taken place, in order to suppress the emotional connection between the execution event itself and of course the family as grief. So you had a situation where, for example, up to 3 people would be buried in the same grave. The graves were not marked in order to conceal their identity. And of course, as I said earlier, now we are even having to use old maps that the Tshwane municipality has been having to try and identify and relocate some of those old graves that belonged to the municipality actually, where these people were buried. So it will be extremely difficult to track that, because even the records do not always point to the exact location of some of these burial sites.
Mr. Binda, did the PAC make representation to the government around the issues of exhumation of their members who were incarcerated at Kgosi and also hanged there?
Yeah, if you will recall, during the time of the first president after the democratic dispensation, Clarence Makwetu, I think he had some discussions with the then president of the country, Utatu Mandela. And then I think after that it was that Bishop Mkhoba, they tried their best, and also Dr. Peko to make presentation, because to us, as I was saying before, that this process is long overdue. It's something that should have been done some time ago. But now at least we are happy that there is a process in place. We are happy that the Minister of Justice, Ndate Mosuta, at least is taking this issue serious. So, but we are hoping that from now going forward, at least we will work together in trying to make sure that the families, they get an opportunity to bury their loved ones in a very dignified manner.
Well, if you'd like to join us, I did say you can call us like Sipho has done. Sipho, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hello.
Hello, Sipho, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir. My question goes to the minister. With due respect, normally a person who's in a position to forgive is a person who's in a position to punish. Now, it puts us in a very difficult situation, because as black people, we are not in a position to punish. And we are the ones that are actually all the time wanting to forgive people who are not interested in forgiveness. Your comment. Thank you.
That's a very difficult one from Sipho there. He says a person who can forgive is a person who is in a position to mete out justice.
Yeah.
And presently, no, you can't mete out justice to anybody.
Well, we can talk about forgiveness another day, but this process is not really about forgiveness. It's about finding closure for the families whose loved ones were the victims of this judicial executions. That is, executions that are sanctioned by law and by the state. What we're trying to do is achieve some redress for them, partial, because the focus is not really about punishing anybody. The focus is really about identifying the whereabouts and actually eventually recovering the remains of the loved ones, and make sure that they get the opportunity to bury their loved ones in dignity and find closure. And that's why part of what we have also requested, I heard you mention correctly so, that we were looking at 3 to 6 months to complete the project. But I have requested the officials that they slow down a bit to allow the families to be part of the exhumations themselves as well, because I think that that moment is a very special and a very crucial one, so that they're able to perform whatever rituals they would want to perform at the point of exhumation, rather than simply do the handover and reburials only with them. So as a consequence of that, I think that the initial time schedule is going to be expanded, because my insistence is that it's taken this long to get to this point. There is no point in rushing it just for the sake of bringing quick closure, because there are no quick closures when it comes to matters of this nature.
Mr. Binda, you said the family would like to The minister has just alluded to the fact that he would like the families to be part of that. You are saying we spoke earlier about the Vulindlela family that had 5 people executed. There's another family, the Bly family, that had 3 people executed. Do they still have family members who can be part of the process?
Yes, Ndati Mateza, they do have families. I mean, you know that, as African people, we normally have extended families. The Vulindlela family obviously is from Bashe, and there is a Vulindlela family in Bashe. So if at least those families would be consulted, I think that will be a very, very good thing, more especially by government. We will also do our part as PAC to ensure that at least those members of the families are found. And then that is why I was saying at least we need now to take this matter serious, cooperate. Government, at least they must cooperate with the PAC, they must work with the PAC, because the intention obviously, as the minister has already alluded, at least is just to bring closure. We know that, of course, by just giving them an opportunity to bury their loved ones will not close this chapter, but at least it's part of the healing process.
I noticed in the research that many of the PAC members who were incarcerated and hanged at this facility were from around Paarl and Cape Town, Langa. I know the PAC had a very strong presence in Langa, but many of them were tribesmen from the Transkei.
You are correct. There was a group which came from Kofimvaba, Queenstown, and then they took a train to Paarl, because they were busy attacking the state institutions then, and also the police as they were defending, apartheid. So most of them, the majority of them, they come from Kofimvaba, Queenstown, when they embarked on this action. But at least what we are saying as PAC, these people must be regarded as heroes, as martyrs, and then these people must be given the honor they deserve. And then it is good that the whole country now is aware that at least these people had to pay a high price, for defending its own people that were killed or brutally killed by the Boers then.
It is quite strange, Minister, that reading this history of the hanging of these of political prisoners, government actually treated them as criminals, common criminals.
Oh yes, obviously the purpose was also to delegitimize the struggle by ensuring that even not only those that were judicially executed. Remember, we're also having a project for exhumation of those that were executed extrajudicially. In other words, illegally without the sanction of a judicial process. And many of them were identified through the TRC process, which continues to be work that we continue to do. For example, of the about 500 that were identified through the TRC process, we've already exhumed just over 100 now. It's a long, arduous task, because sometimes you find that you have to open up 200 graves just to identify one individual. You of course look at the basic features based on the records, and that narrows down to a fewer people that you can extract samples from in order to do the DNA testing that I alluded to earlier.
The other question I wanted to ask you, I propose purposely, if you want to answer the question, you might not answer it. The question is, why concentrate only on political prisoners when the Constitution says very clearly in Section 11, talks about the sanctity of life. Everyone has a right to life. And if you are going to say we are going to concentrate on political prisoners, what about those who are arrested for other things? For instance, I was reminded of a boxer who was the Transvaal middleweight champion, Cameron Adams, who was also hanged for issues pertaining to criminality in Bosemont. And I would want to believe even his parents or his next of kin would like to know where he was buried.
Yeah. Look, obviously the primary objective is to help families find closure, and obviously every family would love that. But between 1960 and 1990, there's probably anywhere between 8,000 and 11,000 people that were executed. To try and exhume and rebury all of those people will probably take the entire budget of the country. It's just not practical. But the other fact is that life has already been taken in all those cases, so there is no life to defend. There is no right to life to defend. We had a system that had no respect for life, and that is part of the history. What we're doing is not to uphold the right to life, because that came after 1994 with the current constitutional order. What we're trying to do is to give recognition to the contribution that was made towards the kind of democracy and freedoms and Bill of Rights and constitutional order that we today have, to remind all of us, really, that none of this came on a silver plate. People sacrificed, even with their lives, for us to achieve what we've achieved. That's why the emphasis is on those who made those sacrifices, and even with their lives.
Mr. Tatumbinda, there is something else that concerns me around this. I'm coming back to you. Let's take this call from Russ from Tsani from Rustenburg. Tsani, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Yes, sir. How are you, sir?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
All right. I would like to ask Mr. Masuta why he only decide now to find a closure for the families of people who died at the Galo. Whereas there are a lot of freedom fighters, even the ones from outside the country, their remains were brought home in time, even before democracy. Why Mr. Masuta decide only now to bring the remains of the ones who died at the Galo? I just want to find a clarity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the minister, you did answer that question, minister, responding to. Probably you can answer. You can try it again.
No. It's true that this project focuses on those that were killed through judicial execution at the gallows. I've just indicated that there is a project that is over 10 years now of identification and exhumation of people who were identified through the TRC process. That process is still ongoing. So this is just another chapter of a process of trying to find closure. You'd recall that sometime last year, the president sanctioned the repatriation of some of our heroes, Moses Kotane and J.B. Max.
Buried in Moscow.
Yes. We are looking at, for example, the Eastern Cape government had in recent times repatriated a certain with the assistance of our missing persons task team, because that's where the expertise in the country is. And we're looking at working on a possible proposal to government to extend the policy to include the identification, the tracking down of people who were buried outside of the country, possibly executed there whilst they were in exile or performing political work or executing the liberation struggle. So those are some of the issues that obviously we will have to come to. And the question as to why now, as I indicated, this project dates back to 2011. And it was introduced as another chapter, another phase in the whole process that dates back to the TRC process. So all of these processes have some linkage of some form or another.
Mr. Mida, I know that the organization, the PAC, has a research department. Is that research department going to help the government in identifying some of the people who were hanged who belong to your party?
Yes, obviously, you know, Jackie Siroke is leading that department, and I think we have even assisted the government even in the past. If you recall, those that were reburied in Pretoria. So the PAC is deeply involved. You know, it's very important, you know, for the people to understand that these people were not supposed to be hanged. You know, they were freedom fighters, and they were supposed to be treated as prisoners of war. But because of the system, which was evil, then they had to go through those processes without even their families getting an opportunity to bury them.
Minister, I was intrigued doing the research on this project that only one white person was ever hanged for political prisoners, John Harris, who actually was arrested for detonating a bomb at Park Station.
Yes, John Harris came from the political organization, I think was called the Liberal Party at the time, and they formed something similar to Mkhonto Wesizwe or APLA called ARM. And
we'll continue that story, Minister, when we come back from a break. Let's go to the break. If you want to talk to us, you can please join us or phone us on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Stay with us.
Ahika Manor produces abstract and symbolic works of art. He called his latest collection Vote with Ink, Not Blood.
Praying for peace, literally, in my own way.
The South African film titled Luister or Listen in Afrikaans tackles issues of race in the country.
I think that the end goal is the reformation of institutional culture, but how we get there is in fact through changing the language policy so that no student is forced to learn in Afrikaans.
It's fashion designers like Julia Mpoko who are starting to pay more attention to menswear and hope to make a mark in the fashion industry.
So regardless of whether you're African, European, there's certain styles that you like. So if an African man enjoys wearing simple, well-tailored pants, then yes, I guess.
Join Refulo Mula for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Friday at 9 p.m. on Trends.
Welcome back to Rights and Recourse as we continue our discussion on the exhumation of the bodies of those who were killed as a result of hanging at the Kosimampur Correctional Facility in Pretoria. I was actually surprised. I want to try and test, forgive me for that, try and test your biblical knowledge here. I'm actually surprised that the apartheid government wasn't even prepared to hand over the bodies of those who died to a next of kin, when even the Romans, Pilate, handed over the body of Jesus to Joseph Arimathea. I don't understand. What was this cruelty about the apartheid system?
Yeah. By the way, just as an aside, you'd recall that back in the days of slavery, a slave was treated as the property of its master. Now, similarly here, the body of the deceased executed prisoner was by law regarded as the property of the state, and the next of kin did not have a legal claim to that body, and it is for that reason that actually even at the chapel, which I'm sure your video showed, where the coffin was brought down for the final ceremony, which the family attended, the body was never opened for viewing by the family, so they never got to see their loved one in death. And of course, as you said, then that would be the last that they have any relations with the body until a few years later, if they are lucky, if they get to be told where the person is actually buried. But like I said, if they're lucky. So it was all aimed at concealing the identity and the whereabouts. And of course, they were buried as paupers, so the family didn't even attend the burial ceremony. It was done entirely by the state.
Mr. Mbinda, in the African custom where people will need to have closure and do certain rituals, I think you heard the minister earlier saying they will allow families to come and do their rituals once the bodies have been identified. The Vulindlela family and many other families, I'm hoping, will be able to do that now.
Yeah, they will have to go through that process, but you see, we don't regard that as closing, as closing the chapter. But as PAC, we believe that those areas where these people come from, at least should be declared as a national monument. And also those families, obviously, they should be adopted by the government because of the role that those martyrs have played, and even the schooling, all this whole process, and evil that was conducted by the then racist regime. It must be included in the school curriculum, because it is very important. Because to me, if at least we take that approach, then at least that will heal, that will be closer to closing the chapter. You see, that's what we are just, requesting from the current government. And the current government must also remember that, you see, those ills or evil things that were done, they were done by the same racist regime which convicted the ex-OPLA combatant now, but administered now by the current government. So we need to look at the entire system. We don't want this government to inherit the evil system, that was initiated by the then racist regime. If we want to talk closure, and then if we also want to, at least we expect those people to heal from this process, and the PAC as an organization, because those people were commanded, by an armed wing, Boko. So that's what we are just requesting to the current government.
Minister, I think Mr. Mbinda made reference to this issue. The information I found the information that I'm referring to, that I used to draft my questions by mistake, because apparently there is very little that is written about these very acts that were happening in between the hanging and the time people spent in jail. What are we doing around that to look after the legacy and the historical side or the heritage?
I had a discussion, a conversation earlier with the Minister of Arts and Culture, Natim Tetwa, and we have agreed to meet soon as part of the bilateral meetings that have commenced with different colleagues, focusing on justice-related matters that affect those specific departments. And in this instance, what some of the discussions that we had relate to the preservation also of some of the archived information, some of which you would find even in your local police station, records of people who ended up in the gallows or elsewhere. And in fact, some of that information has been very helpful in conducting the research to try and piece together information that would lead to the identity and whereabouts of some of the people that we've been able to whose remains we've been able to find. So I think that there is a lot of work between our departments, corrections and justice on the one hand, arts and culture on the other, and other departments, the police, for example, have a critical contribution to make to piece together the different pieces of information.
Not only say that, I'm reminded that your predecessor, Minister Nusivio Mapisa, had actually made the Gallows Memorial Project a place where people can go and see and walk up the, I don't know whether it's up or down, it's down. It's up.
Yeah.
The 52 steps.
Yeah. Well, you had to go up the stairs to hang so that you can fall down. But yes, as I indicated at the start of the program, she actually, if you like, excavated the gallows after it had been sealed off by a previous minister during the IFP.
The minister who was Minister of Correctional Services who belonged to the IFP in the unity government.
Yes, in the government of national unity. So the gallows were completely dismantled and sealed off, and she took the initiative to revive the gallows to what it is now. Some of the aspects thereof had to be reconstructed, but some were preserved. For example, the surface at the bottom, which was sealed, was re-excavated, and it's back to where it used to be. And you can see from the chips there that some damage was done.
Well, we'll continue our discussion here as we're going towards the end of our program, but you can still call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498 or tweet us at Rights Recourse. We did say some time ago that we'd like to dedicate a day and speak about Africa, and if you want us to talk about something in Africa, you can give us a call and tell us. Don't go away. We'll be back right after this.
Long we celebrate those who take strides doing good and changing the world.
I really think that education has to be revisited, and it's an integral part of teaching young people skills of the future.
There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
I think that the treatment should be made available, actually, because it's costly. Growth hormones are very costly.
Where there is a challenge, we bring hope.
I'm alive. And the brain tumor is gone.
Join your host Puleng Mulabati every Friday at 17:30 for more uplifting stories.
Welcome back to Rights and Recourse as we continue our discussion on the reburial or the exhumation of the bodies of those who were killed by hanging at the Kgosi Mampuru facility. Minister, the other thing of concerns that I seem to remember that some political prisoners' remains were handed over to families. And I seem to remember that the ashes of Bram Fischer, who was the state president's patient at the time of his death, were handed over to his next of kin, to his daughters.
Yes. Well, those who...
Like Solomon Mahlangu.
Well, I think that we indicated earlier that only 83 of the 130, for example, are the ones that still remain to be exhumed, and we indicated that some of the exhumations happened soon after the fall of apartheid by different political parties. And I think, if my memory serves me well, Solomon Mahlangu would fall in that category. Well, the focus here really it's on the actual cases of execution. So the case you've just indicated of Brown Fisher would be outside of that. So the cases of judicial execution would be the ones which relate to the question of paupers and anonymous burials, which is why...
Minister, my apology, we've got a call from Cape Town, but he's gone. No, he's not gone. Minister, you can continue.
All right. So what I'm saying is that in the case of judicial executions, that's where the difficulty of identification, but not only that, because they were property of the state, obviously that's one of the reasons why, even if the families knew where they were buried, they could not go and exhume them and rebury them, because that would be basically a violation of the law. They would be charged.
Even in death, you remain a prisoner.
You remain the property, not only a prisoner.
Let me just go down to Cape Town. Mr. Mbinda, you want your final words? I heard the minister saying you asked the minister to help the families. I think, Mr. Mbinda, the families will, the minister is, that there's a, the families are likely going to be helped by government, especially during exhumation. The minister did point out to that. Your final words on this issue.
Yes, we appreciate that, but not all the family members were part of that process. You see, that is why we are saying at least it is very important for the department at least to work closely with PAC, because we know where these people are, we know their names, and we know even where they stay, we know even where we can find their families. So at least the first process that he is referring to, not all of them were part of that process.
Thank you very much. Minister, final word from you. Let's have a final word from the Minister, Mr. Mbinda. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we are running out of time.
I've already explained that I have directed that instead of completing this project within 3 to 6 months, we take longer, so that the family members can actually participate in the exhumation process as well, and not just the burials.
Minister, thank you very much for coming and explaining this to us. It's a groundbreaking event that the minister has started. We cannot limit ourselves to barbaric irrationality when looking at the role of punishment within our society. Life is a universal value, and the greatest demonstration of this value is to forgive and show compassion to our worst offenders by not equivocating them with their crime. It was Mohandas Gandhi who said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." This has been Rights and Recourse. This program is repeated at 5 on Monday morning. And from all of us here in the studio, thank you to our guests. And you do find us on Twitter and on YouTube. Goodbye.